Ladies, gentlemen, welcome back to the Frames Double Feature Hour, the show where I give you a couple of movies, give you a couple of recommendations that would make a very good double feature. This week, our theme is Texas! By golly, this is gonna be a fun one for all of y'all out there. The Lone Star State. It's a good state to base a movie around. We've gotten a lot of great movies based around it. And to add to the excitement of the video, I got a little surprise for you. It's not a double feature this week. It's a triple feature, baby, because everything is bigger in Texas. By golly, I can't wait to get into this one. I'm stoked. First movie on the list, The Last Picture Show. So I just watched The Last Picture Show for the first time a couple days before recording this, and I cannot get this thing out of my head. From the outset, it kind of seemed like this movie shared a lot of similarities with Dazed and Confused. Dazed and Confused is a movie that focuses on these characters and the things that they get up to at the end of their high school career. It just wasn't a movie that I really enjoyed. I would have liked to see more of a plot because I just didn't like this sort of, meandering thing that this movie does, where it kind of assumes that you're more interested in these characters than any story that could be told with them. And when I first threw this movie on, I kind of thought that it was going to be a very similar thing. Oh, how I am glad to have been incorrect. This movie doesn't really aim to tell a story either, but it's so effective in conveying its emotions of its characters in such a realistic and grounded way that I've never seen a movie be able to pull off before. Because this movie perfectly deals in the emotions of being this age, the ambition, love, sex, breakups. It explores all of these themes in a way that just feels perfectly relatable to the audience. There's never a moment where it's a mystery to you what these characters are feeling, because you've probably been there before. It was an absolute pleasure to see baby Jeff Bridges in this after seeing him in The Big Lebowski. I think he's fantastic in this. Everybody's great in it. I mean, Sybil Shepherd steals the show. She steals The Last Picture Show in every scene that she's in. Maybe excluding the scene where she throws a cat off her bed. But overall, this is just a great portrayal of Texas, too, I think. It's set in a small Texas town in 1951, hence the black and white. And you can really just feel this thing breathing with the heat and the dust and the culture. I think it's absolutely crazy how this movie manages to feel so relevant 50 years after being made and 70 years after it's set. And by golly, if this ain't an essential piece of any Lone Star State watching party, I'll eat my 10-gallon hat. Can you guys tell that I've never been to Texas before? Next film up is going to be Blood Simple, the first film by the Coen Brothers.
What I know about is Texas. Down here, you're on your own.
Quick thing. I adore the Coen Brothers. I think they make incredible films, and some of the films that they have made are some of my favorite of all time. And personally, I don't really think that this is as good as some of their best work, but I do think that this is an incredible first outing for them. It follows the same sort of relatively simple plot that you would expect from a Coen Brothers film. Frances McDormand plays the wife of this bar owner, and she's cheating on him with John Getz. And so the bar owner hires a private detective played by M. Emmett Walsh to follow and kill them. And, I don't know what you want me to say about this one. It's a Coen Brothers movie. It's beautifully shot. There is gorgeous color in this thing. They're the perfect type of dumb characters that these two are so gifted at writing. And it's just a wonderfully told story full of all these misunderstandings that make it just so entertaining to watch every step of the way. It's got a lot of really chilling moments in it, too. I think this might be one of the Coen Brothers' darkest films, at least that I've seen. There is one really strong scene around the middle of this movie. If you've seen the movie, you know which one I'm talking about. That always kind of gets me. And the ending also never fails to give me chills. If you like the Coen Brothers, you're going to like this movie. And on top of that, this movie just screams Texas. In my opinion, a lot better than a lot of their other films manage to scream their own setting. And, if you're familiar with some of the Coen Brothers' work and you're watching this video, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, why not No Country for Old Men? No Country for Old Men is fantastic, but I think that it largely overshadows a lot of work by the Coen Brothers, which I think is kind of a shame. Because, No Country for Old Men definitely deserves the praise that it gets. but there's a lot of movies, a lot of incredible films that it kind of pushes to the back burner. And I think this is one of them. Also, kind of unrelated, there is one film by the Coen brothers that I think is massively overshadowed by No Country for Old Men. It is, without a doubt, my favorite movie of all time, and I will definitely be talking about it in a video on this channel at some point in the future. But for now, I'll keep that a secret. You'll know it when you hear it. Getz and McDormand are incredible. M. Emmett Walsh is incredible. The story is incredible, even for being such a dark story. It's really fun. I think this is a movie that gets overlooked a lot because for most people, it probably isn't like in their top 5 Coen brothers movies, but it's still an incredible film, a very great film about Texas, and was so much fun the first time that I watched it that I watched it like twice in the same week. Definitely do yourself a favor and check this one out. And last but not least, for the surprise triple feature, I'm going to be talking about The Devil's Rejects. Rob Zombie is kind of a controversial figure, and I don't even mean that in sense of his style or his content. I just mean that he's controversial in the way that a lot of people strongly dislike his movies. I've always kind of had a soft spot for the guy, and there's something that I really like about this movie. I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe I'll figure it out at some point over the course of this stream of consciousness rant about it. For one, I think the premise of this film is very clever, even if it loses a little bit of steam in its execution. But basically, this is a sequel to Rob Zombie's first film, House of a Thousand Corpses, although I haven't personally found that it's super necessary that you watch these two in order to understand this one. Personally, I have mixed feelings about House of a Thousand Corpses. You can watch it, don't watch it. I don't care, I'm not gonna hold it against you. There is some text that opens this movie that kind of explains a little bit of the situation, and it also mentions that there is evidence of over 75 murders committed by the Firefly family, which confirms that the statistics of this so-called House of a Thousand Corpses were marginally inflated. This thing has some really gorgeous cinematography too. This is one of the only times that I've really seen such a budget go to something so exploitative, and let me tell you, Rob Zombie really puts this budget to work. So to start the movie, this family of bad guys is just waking up in the early morning hours as their home is raided by this police force led by Sheriff John Quincy Wydell, who is played by William Forsythe. Don't worry, I will be coming back to this guy, I promise. This all culminates in this big shootout, and let me tell you, this is one of the most exciting openings to a horror movie that I have ever seen. Like, when I was rewatching this movie to talk about it, I was genuinely getting like kind of giddy with excitement about this shootout because it's really cool and it's really fun to watch. It's a great scene, it has a lot of energy, and it maintains that energy too when one of these cops throws tear gas into the house and then they all go in with masks on. It's honestly the coolest. But anyway, of the 4 members of this family, one is killed, one is taken into police custody, and 2 of them, Otis and Baby, are able to escape unharmed, run out of there like cats on a hot tin roof. Without getting into more of the plot of this movie too much, this movie sort of presents its antagonists as if they were the protagonists, and vice versa, which sounds really weird, but basically the point is that you watch Otis and Baby and their father, Captain Spaulding, commit some really heinous crimes throughout this movie, but still, they're sort of framed as the protagonists of this story, and Sheriff John Quincy Wydell, the vengeance-seeking sheriff that goes after them, is sort of framed as the antagonist, which sounds kind of insane, but the most insane part is the fact that it kind of works, you know? In any other story, the sheriff would absolutely be the good guy, and these horrible characters would absolutely be the bad guys, but it just kind of works in a weird way. At least, I think some people have to admit that the sheriff is just as corrupt as this family is terrible. Mama Firefly, who is the member of the family that ended up in police custody earlier in the movie, killed this guy's brother, a guy named George, another police officer. And so as the movie goes on, this guy starts to go more and more corrupt. He kind of starts to associate himself less and less with his position as sheriff and more as this vigilante that only wants justice for his brother. One thing that I thought was incredibly clever is his use of the phrase walk the line at a couple points throughout this movie. He says at a couple times like, I'm trying to walk the line, or like, I tried to walk the line, meaning that like he tried to kind of do his job by the book and not overstep his bounds of what he is allowed to do as a sheriff. I can only only assume that it's a reference to the Johnny Cash song, Walk the Line. The song was about Johnny Cash wanting to be faithful to his wife, basically saying, I'm not going to cheat on you, I'll stay faithful, I'll walk the line, which is a promise that he ended up breaking multiple times. He actually did cheat on his wife in spite of the sentiments that he expresses in that song. And I just think that's such a clever reference to use for a character like John Quincy Wydell, because much like Johnny Cash failed to walk the line by not cheating on his wife, JQ Dubs also fails to walk the line by not maintaining some kind of ethical standard for his police work. Which, I mean, whether or not you think the Firefly family is deserving of whatever kind of twisted punishment this guy has in mind for them, there's really no denying that this is not what due process looks like. I know this movie is pretty polarizing. I personally really enjoy it. I do want to give a bit of a content warning. This is a bit more intense and disturbing at times than most of the other movies that I talk about on this channel. Speaking of which, if I can get a little serious here for a second, I do also just want to give a warning that there is a scene of some pretty explicit sexual violence in this movie. If that's not something that you want to experience, I would recommend sitting this one out. But even if you do choose to sit this one out, you still got two other great movies for one hell of a double feature. I want to thank you all for watching. I want to thank you so much for sticking around, and I hope I'll see you again in the next one. All right, take care, partners.